Solange is back with a brand new album, When I Get Home, which dropped out of nowhere. She just laid it upon us without any announcement, and here it is. Last time we heard from Solange was 2016 with her A Seat at the Table album, the very critically acclaimed album it was too. Made a lot of year-end lists for a lot of people. Many people regard it as one of the best albums of the year. It was one of those albums for me that just didn't quite impact me that much. Definitely appreciated what it was going for, but for the most part it kind of just fell in the background most of the time. Didn't really get much out of the music personally. I will say Cranes in the Sky though is an amazing song and easily one of the best songs of the year it came out as well. And of course this new album's been released and getting a lot of buzz and hype. I'm sure it's going to get the same treatment as A Seat at the Table, probably going to make a lot of year-end lists once again, which I don't have any issues with, because actually I think it's an improvement on A Seat at the Table for me. I think this is a solid album. I think this is a nice listen, a very lovely blend of R&B, hip-hop, some jazz elements, some funk elements, courtesy of Tyler the Creator, who's on production on this album, and also Steve Lacy. A lot of big names on this album too in the production credits and the features. You got people like The Dream, Playboy Carti, Panda Bear of all people. Panda Bear's on this album, can you believe? And essentially Solange has stated that this is a love letter to her hometown of Texas, and it's about a 39-minute album. Many tracks on here kind of flowing into each other seamlessly. Pretty much an album of short vignettes, if you will. Not many tracks run for too long. They kind of stay around the 2-minute-ish mark, aside from a few exceptions, quite a few interludes as well throughout the album, which I think works in its favour and also to its detriment at times. I think at the core of this album there are plenty of great songs scattered throughout, but for me, I just feel like the structure of this album feels a little loose. Many of these tracks are quite loose in themselves, don't really have much of a form to them. They almost feel quite improvised at times with the way they flow, and Solange's like vocal riffing on a lot of these tracks just kind of feels very in the moment, which I really appreciate. It does kind of leave me underwhelmed at times though, when some of the songs don't really have much of a striking appeal to them. They don't really leave much of an impression on me. They're kind of just very nice on the ears, but once they're over, I'm not really left thinking about much. It's just a nice track to be listening to in the moment, and then it moves on and I'm just kind of like, yeah, this is nice, but where is the identity of this album? Like, what is this album here for? They don't really leave me thinking about much. I'm just like, yeah, this is beautiful, this sounds organic, this sounds gorgeous, but then that's kind of all I get from them. At times I'm just left thinking of how I felt after I listened to Be the Cowboy. Like, yeah, sure, it was nice on the ears, the vocals sounded gorgeous, and you know, the instrumentals were lovely, but each track just doesn't have much of a development to it. Like, it just feels very undercooked, just more of like mere ideas being put together, as opposed to these are fully fleshed out songs. Because that's the issue with this album, not really many songs at the core. Almeda is another track as well, because this track has Playboy Carti featured on this, and just it works so well. Like the flow and the smoothness of this track, like the way he kind of floats along. And Almeda is another track as well, which I think stands on its own 2 feet because of the Playboy Carti feature, I would say. It just sounds very smooth, it works so well. You wouldn't think that this would be a collaboration that would ever happen, and yet it did, and it goes down pretty well. And unfortunately for the wrong reasons, I think Bins stands out on this album. Just because of that beat, I think it sounds very out of place for the flow of the album. It just sounds very undefined, you know, like it sounds very amateur and just kind of shoddy for me. Just takes over the track, just really like gets a bit irritating to the ears. And the way it's placed on the album too, like it doesn't exactly flow into the next one, or the track prior to it doesn't really flow into it either. It just kind of comes out of nowhere, and then once the track is over, the beat just takes this dead stop, and then the next song comes in and it's just completely different. Really could have been refined, you know, it could have had a better sound quality to it. I just think it sounds really tinny and Yeah. And even though I've been saying that I'm not really a huge fan of the way this album is like structured with its short length tracks and stuff and its sort of undefined moments, I think it does work in its favor though, because some of the tracks get quite repetitive with Solange's like vocalizations or the similar beat kind of just like it's being and even though I've been saying that I'm not particularly huge on the way this album is structured with how loose it feels for the most part, I think it does work in its favor though, because sometimes Solange is like riffing on these vocalizations, they get quite repetitive, you know, with like the things I imagined, things I imagine, things I imagine. And many other tracks do a similar thing as well, where she's just like humming a tune and it kind of goes on for quite a while. But luckily, the songs don't stay on too long for it to get irritating. Like if these songs had gone on longer and she was doing similar things with her vocals, it probably would have got quite irritating and hindered the album a lot more than it has. But yeah, other than that, I feel like I think this is a solid album. I just think there are a lot of issues I have with it to really call it a great album. Again, I think a lot of people love this, and for all the reasons I say that I'm not huge on the album, are probably reasons people will use to say this is why the album works. It's one of those releases, you know? I just think if there was like a strong theme running through the album, it would have warranted the track lengths and the way that they're structured. But for the most part, I don't really get much out of these songs lyrically, I don't think. You could probably stretch out the lyrical ideas of a track like Dreams a little further and make it a little more interesting than just a very basic surface level message that it sends off. Similarly with Almeda too, even I can't deny that descending piano line that comes in leading into the chorus where the dream starts singing. Oh, I love that part. But anyway, before I start going on, rambling on and on and on and on and on, this is a solid album. It's good. It's a good release. It doesn't really strike me in ways that I wanted to. Falls short in quite a few areas, but overall it's a lovely listen, and I think a 6 out of 10 is probably the best I can go with this album. I think it's good. I prefer it to A Seat at the Table actually, but you know, that's just my opinion anyway. Let me know your thoughts on this album if you have heard it, if you think it's much better than what I said, and if you dispute any of the things I've said, do let me know as well. And if you think you've interpreted things differently to how I have, then I'd absolutely be willing to listen to your interpretation as well. Thank you for watching. Have a good day. Goodbye. Please try watching the video before you dislike it, because you know that'd be good. Thank you. Goodbye.